Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your main man, Killer B, the doggone witch swine in general. You got a witch, I'm burning them up. Yo, check it out. I got a good video for you guys today. It's actually in a response that I was talking to Brother Shaka over there at My Art Forever. You guys go over there and check out his channel. He got some good content. You want to learn meta and stuff like that. He got that going on over there. He's also part of the movement to rid the world of these rotten cults and the infamous wicked witch of the East, Mr. Sa Netter, trying to get these people up out of here to stop fooling and misleading the people. But another note, we got this good information here. I got from we had a little discussion on slavery, and that he thought that a person, a slave, wouldn't be allowed to have a business. I was doing some studying on ancient Egypt and stuff, and about slavery with them. And what's up, Chamia? How at different times slaves played different roles. They had certain privileges, and certain times they didn't have those privileges and stuff, right? So I don't want to really get into all of that. You guys, it's a simple Google search. You can find out all that stuff. But there was one thing that I said, there was time where these slaves was actually food man to you. Hey, what's up? Yeah, thank you too. So I'm going to show you that in African American history, there was such thing as slaves having actual. Yo, Swab Star, what up, bro? I'll see you in a minute. What's going on, man? Good to see you over here. That slaves actually had, some slaves actually had jobs, like little side hustles. Shaka didn't really get that or understood it, so I told him I had some sources and stuff. I didn't pull up the sources that I did have for the video that I did where I spoke on it, but I just did a quick search and found this. It had a couple examples of it, so I just wanted to share that with you guys. Let me put my supporters list up here before we get going. Let me do my thing here. 1 second. Oh man. All right. Put this thing up. Good to see you guys up in here already. All right. Let me get this thing here. Set. All right. If any of you guys like to join the supporters list, as you see the list of names here at the bottom of the screen, you can hit my Cash App with a donation to any amount. I give you a thank you video, and I'll add your link to the list down here. If you love me even more, you can become a member. You see, we got a few members already, and the supporters list. So you like to be added to the supporters list, your name will be on here for every video live stream that I do. You will be shouted out at the bottom of the screen. So with that, let's start the show. My forever. Hit that like button, boy. Yeah, what's up, man? All right, so this is what I was talking about. I didn't pull the stuff from the original video that I was talking about, but this is something I just pulled up real quick and decided to do. Okay. To the screen. This is just coming from the encyclopedia, but it lists some sources where the information comes from and stuff. So hope you guys enjoy this. See, slave entrepreneurs. Says the notion of enslaved African Americans employing the principles of capitalism to accumulate wealth might initially seem odd, considering status as property. Yet some slaves, under favorable conditions, accrued capital in the form of currency, commodities, and on the rare occasion, real estate, by providing essential services to the local populace, either by utilizing their artisanal skills or supplying goods for various trade exchanges. One former slave observed that there were lots of Negroes who had trades. They could make brooms and chair bottoms, and lots of them made a lot of money that way. And sometimes they would take money and buy their wife and children. and then by himself. Rodwick, 1972-1979, volume 18, page 41. These enslaved capitalists peddled handcrafts made in their limited free time and produced from their own gardens in the street markets of such cities as Charleston, Savannah, and New Orleans. And when I spoke to him, I was putting the idea in a Northeast setting where slaves didn't live. Oh, I didn't share the screen. Hold on, my bad, y'all. My bad. There you go. I put it in the setting in the Northeast, how slavery was quite different than slavery in the South and the Northeast, like where I live, right? Slaves were in the South. Slaves, most of their occupation being enslaved was working in fields and stuff like that, and industrial type things. And they lived in slave quarters in most cases, right? Where there'd be separate houses or housing on the plantation. Whereas in the North, where you might have a wealthy family that just have a house, you know what I mean? And they might have 1 or 2 or 3 slaves, but those slaves live in the house with their masters. And because a lot of the chores and the things, the work that they had to do involved with work that was inside of the home. Or inside of one of their businesses. Maybe someone might have been a lawyer or a doctor or something, and they would have these slaves assisting them. So the life of a slave in the Northeast was quite different. If you look at a couple of my videos on slavery in the Northeast, a really good one to check out is my witch trials video. It talks about people like Atuba, the slave, and where in court proceedings and stuff, where they weren't really looked at as a slave. Well, they were looked at as a slave, but they had something to say, like people listened to them, right? With the witch trials, there was a lot of slaves that were brought in charge with witchcraft. And we'll see in a lot of cases that I stated in that video where a lot of these guilty. And there's a lot of cases where the star witness on these slave trials, and a lot of times were slaves. African American slaves, there were Native American slaves, there were African slaves and Native slaves from the Caribbean that moved there and stuff. And that's where a lot of the spiritual work and stuff like that came from, a lot of them too, because a lot of these slaves were imported from the Caribbean. But that's a whole other video. You guys can check that video out and stuff. It's not hard to find on my channel. It says here, these enslaved capitalists peddled handcrafts made in the limited free time and produced from their own gardens in the street markets of such cities, Charleston, Savannah, and New Orleans. They sold goods and bartered the slave quarters of southern plantations, and they engaged in trade and self-hiring negotiations with white merchants, factory owners, and planters. Like their free counterparts, enslaved entrepreneurs sought to improve the living conditions of themselves and their families. But ultimately, their goal was to use the resources of their economic activities to gain their freedom. That's something that's interesting too, because most people think of a slave, oh, he's just a slave, like he live and die there, right? Where a lot of these plantation or a lot of these slave owners and stuff actually allow slaves to buy their freedom. Slavery wasn't that harsh for every slave. Of course, there were wicked, evil slave masters that didn't give a damn and like did a whole bunch of crazy stuff. But there was also people that just needed help around the house. You know what I mean? That just needed help around the house, or a lot of the Christian traditions and stuff, especially the Protestants, where they believed in certain things in the Bible that actually sought that owning a slave or a servant was okay. Sometimes they were mistreated. Sometimes they were. Sometimes these slaves inherited the estate when the slave master died. Let's keep reading. During the era of American slavery, a small number of enslaved laborers were able to use their skills to establish businesses, and with the blessing of at least acquaintance of their slave owners. For example, in 1850, former slave Benjamin Montgomery of Loudoun County, Virginia, was purchased by Mississippi planter Joseph Davis, brother of the future president of the Confederate States of America, Jefferson Davis. Keep that in mind, y'all, as we read on. On the Davis family's plantation, Davis Ben Montgomery learned to operate the plantation steam-powered cotton gin and acquired knowledge and land surveillance and building construction. In addition, with the help of Joseph Davis, Montgomery established an importing business, providing goods from New Orleans to both white and black consumers. The businesses prospered, enabling Montgomery to purchase his family's freedom on his own. See, this is a slave that was actually had a side hustle, and was paid for certain things, because these slaves had to work their time on the plantation or whatever job they had, but after their work time was over, they had free time, and a lot of times these slave masters allowed them to have hobbies and do certain things, make crafts. And maybe when they would get permission, they would have to have permission slips, just like a kid in high school and stuff need a permission slip to go to the nurse or come back for class. They need a slip or whatever, saying that they're late, they're excused, right? Slaves had the same thing, and they were allowed by some of these slave masters and stuff to go out into the town, right, and sell some of the crafts, to make extra money to be able to buy maybe sugar or buy candy for the kids or something that they might need to help them in their daily living on the plantation. And the reason why some of these plantation owners would do this is because what's up, Maggie? Good seeing you here. Was because they that would be less things that would have to come out of the master's pocket. So the master had to provide everything for the slave. So food, clothing, and I did a video on the health of slaves and what the slaves actually ate in their rations that were given out to them on a monthly basis or a bi-yearly basis or yearly basis that they had. For instance, they might be given 2 shirts and 1 pair of pants and 1 pair of shoes a year. And they had to live with that. If the shoes wore out, hey, they didn't have any shoes to wear. They better learn how to fix those shoes, right? So if a slave could do little side work or the rations that they were given on a, say, monthly basis, maybe a bushel of potatoes, a side of salt pork, you know what I mean? And some of those things might run out, or they would like something to go with it. Maybe say they got some salt pork and they might need let's say some collard greens. They got some collard greens and they want to put some salt pork in it. They might sell a little something, make little beaded necklaces or something to get enough money to buy a little salt pork to put in with the greens. Like, you know what I'm saying? To help their life. You know what I mean? The everyday life, something to a treat or something to make the pains of being a slave a little better. You know what I mean? To help out with that. Says the business prospered, enabling Montgomery to purchase his family's freedom in his own. After the Civil War, Montgomery brought Davis Bend Plantation. See? after the Civil War. Now, especially during the Civil War, a lot of these slave masters didn't have the resources that they had before the war, because the war, the Union soldiers would destroy their plantations, would burn some of their crops, so they didn't have money. And like I read in another video that I did, that sometimes the slaves were eating better than the master, because the master needed the slave in good health to be able to work to at least make the money, where the master would have to cut back on his living to provide for his workers, to get things done so he can keep his life and his plantation up and running, right? Because if you sit there and eat good while your slave is starving and pass out in the damn field, guess what? Your eating good very soon will diminish, because you have nothing to accumulate to make that money. It says, after the Civil War, Montgomery brought Davis Best plantation and supervised his operation to his death in 1877. By 1881 now, check this out. However, the Davis family had reacquired the plantation as a result of foreclosure proceedings against Montgomery's family. So the family inherited the company after he died. What was that? 3-4 years later. So they couldn't hold on to it. And it went into foreclosure. So this slave, this guy had brought the plantation, I guess still owed money on the plantation, was paying a mortgage on it. Just like we have today in America. That happens with anybody. Most enslaved entrepreneurs, but the blackity blacks, the blackologists, the Afrocentrics would say, oh, they had them in a fucked up contract. They just took the land and all that shit. That didn't happen in all the cases. It happened in some cases, yes. But usually wealthy businessmen and stuff like that, they usually played fair a lot of times. It was a lot of times the poor people would do trickery. Most enslaved entrepreneurs were artisans. Some enslaved African Americans were taught their skills by family members. By others, had been trained by white artisans engaged by slave owners who recognized the high return on hiring out enslaved artisans in labor shortage markets. So, hey, you might have the average slave do the field, and when it's time to come in the field, he might send them like, yo, go work for such and such. And the slave owner make a little something, and they might give a little something to the slave. The man that he go to work for, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, here, a little something, might feed him or do something, like, you know what I mean? Where he get a little extra. They held such occupations as blacksmith, carpenters, coppers, cooks, seamstresses, ferry operators, wheelwrights, shoemakers, and millers. These were skills in high demand and therefore yielded substantial livelihood that could be turned into lucrative business. In other autobiography, Behind the Scenes, 1868, Elizabeth Lee Keckley, formerly enslaved in Dinwiddle Courthouse, Virginia, and St. Louis, Missouri, told her mother teaching her to sew as a child and using her skills as a young adult to support the impoverished slaveholding family, who owned her as well as her mother. She stated, I was fortunate in obtaining work. In a short time, I had acquired something of a reputation as a seamstress and dressmaker. The best ladies in St. Louis were my patrons. And when my reputation was once established, I never lacked for orders. With my needle, I kept bread in the mouths of 17 persons for 2 years and 5 months. As a result of the slaveholding family's poverty, Keckley was allowed to hire herself out as a seamstress to the affluent women in St. Louis, and thereby they began to flourish dressmaking business. In gratitude for her kind demeanor and superb talent, the best ladies of St. Louis loaned Keckley $1,200 in 1855 to purchase her son's freedom and her own. Now you see this? The old wicked ass white people. Now you see these wealthy St. Louis ladies gave her money to purchase her son's freedom and her own freedom. So now she could go out and work full time with her business. In 1860, she moved her dressmaking business to Washington, D.C. Now we see here, slavery is still in effect in America, 1960. Now you see this woman that brought her, got her slavery, got freed, her son freed, and had a flourishing business and was able to move from St. Louis to Washington, D.C. Now that's a long way. St. Louis is a long way from Washington, D.C. And where they said she started at, she started it in Virginia, I think it said, right? Yeah, Dwindle Courthouse, Virginia. So from Virginia to St. Louis, maybe the slave master might have owned property in both places, right? And last she was in St. Louis. I actually watched a movie, slave movie. It might have been like the Harry Tubman movement, something like that. I watched, and the slaves. Oh no! I think that was it was a big trial. What was the trial for the slave guy? Now, damn, who was it? I'm trying to think of who it was. I can't think of who it was. I did a video on it, spoke on it. She moved to Washington, D.C., and eventually counted among her patrons the wife of Senator Jefferson Davis of Mississippi and the First Lady of the United States, Mary Todd Lincoln. Like Keckley, slave entrepreneurs took advantage of what's up, Nikki? I've seen some very well-made slave craft work. One of them was hoodoo canes. Slaves carved them out of wood. There was a guy out here. I was looking for him. I don't know if he died or what actually happened to the gentleman, but he's facing really like ill canes. Like somebody with a cane. It'll take him a while to do it, but he would put all types of faces and all types of stuff he would carve into the cane. I actually saw a guy on the bus the other day that had one of his canes. That was pretty cool. Canes and stuff. The cane guy. I forgot to call them, but I haven't seen them around. I gotta ask some of the old timers and stuff out here. Where is he? It said Keckley slave entrepreneurs took advantage of the flexibility and independence that being hired out or self-hired afforded them. It was an accepted practice for slave owners to loan the services or skills or semi-skilled slaves to local merchants, factory owners, and other planters. You know, of course, some people are going to be like, shit, this is my slave. I ain't going to be getting money and stuff off my slave, and I ain't getting nothing out of it. You know, a slave make $10 and something, he might have to give the slave owner $6. You know what I mean? It is what it is. Like, you know what I mean? You own. So, yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, make sure you guys hit that like button, y'all. Please hit the like button. Okay. The terms. All right. The terms of the loan were often set out in contracts stipulating housing, food, and clothing provisions for the slave, as well as payment schedules to use slaves' labor and self-hire arrangements. However, slave owners left it to the enslaved worker to make his or her own contracts. Hear that? As in the case of Keckley, such hiring practices often led to hiring slave living independent of their masters as normal or virtually free slaves. Lewis Clark, a self-hired slave in Kentucky, managed to provide for all his needs, even though he had no distinctive skills. In his autobiography, Narratives of the Suffering of Lewis and Milton Clark, 1846, he explained, I hired my time at $12 a month, boarded and clothed myself to meet my payments. I split rails, burned coal, peddled grass seed, and took hold of whatever I could find to do. Bland, 2001, page 37. Oops. Although being hired out or self-hired were possible avenues to some degree of economic independence, the position of qualities deemed necessary for any successful business endeavor were also prerequisites of potential entrepreneurs within the slave community. Risk-taking, ingenuity, business savvy, and aggressiveness were characteristics enslaved children learned from their elders. Slave born out, that's just like my father, he 80 in his late 80s. He talking about how he used to sell boiled peanuts down in Myrtle Beach. And he had his little things like boiled peanuts here, boiled peanuts, right? Another friend, I actually had his brother on my show when we were talking about the 60s and civil rights movement. His older brother, which is in his late 80s also, on the corner of my street, like I live in the suburbs, but we know like at the end of my block, there's a family, like 3 houses and stuff. They're a family. And they owned like years, like way back in the day, they owned all this land. And, you know, then they sold little by little and stuff like that. But he said, yeah, I know them. He said, I used to sell pumpkins for them. I had to sit right on the corner of your street and sell pumpkins for a nickel a piece. So black people had their little hustles and stuff and knew how to make money, right? By they gift talking and, you know, doing quality work and, you know, their aggressiveness in business, like it says, were characteristics enslaved children learn from their elders. Slave-born Lunsford Lane recounted his introduction to business in his autobiography, The Narrative of Lunsford Lane, 1842. When he was a child, his father gave him a basket of peaches, he states. I sold them for 30 cents, which was the first money I've ever made in my life. Bland, 2001, page 94. After several small-scale money-making schemes, Lane established a tobacco and pipe manufacturing operation in Raleigh, North Carolina, with his enslaved father as his mentor. Lane was able to purchase his freedom from the proceeds of his venture. Taking the risk of establishing a business was a precarious undertaking for enslaved African Americans. The act itself was illegal. State slave codes prohibited slaves from entering into business contracts on their own behalf. And slave laborers were not allowed to acquire property and were banned from learning to read and write. Furthermore, slaves could not venture beyond their master's property without written permission. Now you see that now they say that in some states. The slave slaves could not venture beyond their master's property without written permission and were sometimes required to obtain licenses or permits to engage in artisanal endeavors. These were major obstacles in enterprising slaves. Nonetheless, economic agency continued within the slave community. Slave owners utilizing the hiring out time and self-hiring schemes customarily ignored state regulations that conflicted with their profit-making schemes. Now, I'm sure a lot of business owners wouldn't tell on the slave. Like, shit, that boy, he know how to run that. He know how to he good at that blacksmithing, boy. That boy know how to swing that hammer and stuff and make them rails or make whatever fences or whatever they need to make, right? And that business owner ain't gonna tell. Shit, he got this nigga here to build all this stuff quicker than his white workers. And a lot of times these white workers didn't have the skills that the slaves had. Because the slave might acquire the skills from a man's master that had a blacksmith business, that had a plantation business, that ran with the cotton gins and stuff, where the white people didn't have the experience like the slave had. You see with the Irish and the Italians came into America, immigrated here, a lot of them couldn't get jobs. The blacks had the jobs because they were skilled laborers. And a lot of these Italians and Irishmen, they didn't have the skills to be able to get a job, and a lot of things would happen. A lot of Irish people say, well, we didn't do anything to the slaves and stuff. We wasn't even here. But yes, you did. When you got here and saw that all the black people was getting all the jobs, you started stringing them up. Just like up north too. If you go to Washington Square Park, there's a plaque that talks about where the Irish and Italian was hanging blacks. When you see the gangs of New York and stuff like that, the movie gangs, that's what this is all about. The industrial area where the blacks had all the skills. And these people didn't have any skills to work, right? Ways, depending on region, temperament of the slave owner, like I mentioned before, and labor system employed. In urban areas, most slaves were domestics and often were assigned food marketing duties that facilitated opportunities to trade in the marketplace in one's own behalf. I'm gonna put the link in the chat a little bit as soon as I'm done. I just wanted to read all this stuff first. In urban areas, most slaves were domestics and often were assigned food marketing duties that facilitated opportunities to trade in the marketplace in one's own behalf. While making purchases of the slave-owning family, enterprise slave women sold or bartered pastries, cakes, handicrafts to make their own money. In addition, enslaved men contributed fish, baked breads, and many other items, including the game of hunting trips. Although state slave codes prohibited slaves from carrying guns, slaves were able to circumvent the laws when necessary. According to Mr. Huddleston, a former enslaved Tennessean, colored folk Ben had guns all their life. They kept them hid. Rawwick P36. Some urban slaves also cultivated vegetable gardens on small plots they were allowed to use. Fresh produce flowed into food markets from many of the gardens of slave workers. Now that's what I spoke on too. Like say like here in the north, where a slave owner might have a slave in his house or something. You know, he got to feed him. He might give that slave a little plot of land. This even happened in the South. Like, hey, you little plot of land, you get a couple seeds and stuff, grow your collard greens, grow your turnips, your potatoes, your onions and stuff. Now, this is stuff that is self-made. So the plantation owner doesn't have to provide these things now. So now this is basically like a perk for the slave owner. And they can't do it while they're working. They do it after work. So the time that they have to go home, take care to feed their kids and stuff like that, now they can use that time to feed their chickens, raise their little hog or whatever. So now this slave owner doesn't have to provide for the slave. He still owns the slave. Now he don't even have to feed them that much because they making their own damn food and making food better than what he was giving them. See, this space is very different. Light on slavery, and from what you would see in a lot of the Afrocentric depictions of slavery or the movies and stuff like that. We can't always look at movies and tell the way of life was. Some movies, yeah, they get really accurate and they make it a point to be historically accurate. In some cases, they'll make the story exaggerated. They'll exaggerate the story or to fit a certain narrative for the reason the movie's coming out or whatever. So they'll even make stuff up in a movie. There might be a movie on, say, Malcolm X, right? Not everything in that movie Malcolm X did. You know, they're gonna fucking bullshit to make the movie better. You know what I mean? Born a slave in 1777. Manumitted. And manumitted, I don't even know what that word means right there. Manumitted. Nigga, you know what that word means? And 18, you better not look it up either. You supposed to know. 18, 19, free freight. McWhirter was the free freight. Goddamn, what a name. Free freight. That's free freight right there. Was the first African American to legally register a town. Oh, snap. Let me do this right here real quick. I forgot. No, gun it. I ain't been here that long, but still. Hold on one second. Y'all gonna have to hold on a second. I'll finish this thing up here for y'all. You know what? Take this over there. I'm hitting the button. Come on, man. Oh, there we go. Computer acting super slow. Hope y'all still with me here. Can y'all hear me? Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, y'all listening. Oh, Nagy with the quick, fast on the trigger. Man, why did it say set free? Man, I can't even pronounce that. Man. Hold on, let me set this thing here. Put my damn monetization on. Hold on a second. Yo, why is my computer acting so slow right now? Only when I'm trying to do something. Come on, dog, on it. Ah, man. All right. Oh, here you go. So what you guys think of this so far? I'm going to open the panel up. Actually, I'll drop the link now. Don't forget to hit that like button, y'all. All right. Okay. All right, let me get back to this now. Born a slave, 1777. So they were still importing slaves in the United States when this man was born, right? And he was freed in 1819. Slaves, for those of you who don't know, the importation of slaves was banned in 1804. I think the law was presented in 1802 and it was passed in 1804, if I got the numbers right. So there were no slaves being brought into the United States after 1804. Of course, people smuggled slaves, of course, right? But it was against the law. You could be hung for importing slaves at that time. When you hear about these stories about they was throwing slaves in the goddamn ocean. The bottom of the ocean is filled up with slaves. Now, they never tell you because they were thrown overboard. You know, sometimes because they were sick and they didn't want all the rest of them to be sick. Yes. But when they were thrown over in mass quantities was because they were being chased by the U.S. government, by the U.S. Navy, or by the British Navy, because they would be fined, tried, and hung if they were caught with slaves on their ships, because it was illegal to import and export slaves from Great Britain and the United States. All right, so let me read this here. Was the first African American to legally register a town. With profits from various entrepreneurial endeavors, McWhirter found New Philadelphia, Illinois in 1836 on land purchased from the U.S. government. Now you see this? Slaves is buying property, or ex-slaves, or blacks in general. A lot of these people say, oh, blacks can own nothing and do nothing until the civil rights era and all this crazy stuff, right? They was doing shit, just like the white people, if you got the money. 1785, McWhirter assisted his master, George McWhirter, who is allegedly his father. What? Wait, hold on. McWhirter assisted his master, George McWhirter, who is allegedly his father. Okay, all right, I get it. And establishing a farm on Pulaski County, Kentucky. When the master moved on to Tennessee to start a new farm, he left McWhirter in Kentucky to manage his holdings. McWhirter oversaw operations of the farm by day and by night, operated a mining and manufacturing enterprise he had founded during the War of 1812. His business extracted crude niter from nearby caves to produce, I thought niter is saltpeter, to produce saltpeter, and that's what's used for gunpowder. Yep, I learned that a little kid watching cowboy movies and stuff. The proceeds from his business and other revenue-generating opportunities he undertook by hiring out his time enabled McWhirter to purchase his freedom, whereupon he petitioned the court to have the H in McWhirter dropped from his surname and acquired the nickname Free Frank. Before his death in 1854, McWhirter had purchased the freedom of 16 family members with profits earned through the land speculation, commercial farming, and sale of town lots in New Philadelphia. See that? In the countryside, some plantation owners were allowed. Let me drop the link up here before I forget. It's almost done. Man on mission. Yeah. You know what I mean? Thinking how well you would work at certain things. Just think of how well you would like be able to do something because you're a damn slave. You got no choice but to know how to do it. You're damn sure gonna learn how to do it well. Sometimes you had no choice but to do it well and to do it at their speed that they need. You know, people on the jobs today, they work in a factory, they got quotas. Like, yo, we need 1,500 pieces here at shift. We need 1,500 pieces made. Shit. Now, you go under that, there's going to be some trouble. If you go over it, good. Try to go farther. And some people took pride in their work, no matter if they were slave or not. In the countryside, some plantation owners were allowed their slaves to grow vegetables and raise livestock on small parcels of land and often purchased the produce in surplus after enslaved gardeners had put aside a portion of the harvest for the family's consumption. In one particular case, a planter demanded that his slaves keep chickens on their assigned lots. According to ex-slave, each family had a chicken house and they had to raise chickens. The white people, buy them from you. Allowing slaves to use a small parcel of land was not an act of generosity. Slave owners reduced the food rations of slaves who were permitted to cultivate small lots. Moreover, the enslaved worker had to continue the daily work schedules for the master, and only after work was done they could toil their private gardens or tend to their livestock. On plantations adopting the gang system of labor, slave workers from sun up to sundown. Slaves worked from sun up to sundown. Some slaves then worked in their gardens at night and on Sundays. Traditionally, a day of rest for slaves. Most planters on the outskirts of New Orleans, Savannah, and Charleston, however, used the task system where slaves were assigned individual tasks daily. When the daily chores were complete, the remainder of the day was their own. See that? Whether residing in the city or countryside, and whether skilled or unskilled, enslaved African Americans, drop the link here. Shit, ain't nobody up in this motherfucker. Oh, excuse my language, y'all. I'm trying to cuss. My first cuss word of the video. So trying to what the hell happened here? Okay, there you go. All right. Whether residing in the city or countryside, or whether skilled or unskilled, enslaved African Americans gained access to exchange networks, which facilitated small-scale money-making enterprises, while race and their unfree status significantly hindered the economic agency of bond people. Market demand for their products sometimes prevailed against the bigotry of white self-hiring, a potential stepping stone to economic freedom, conferred legitimacy of the enslaved worker for laying to the. I'm reading it off the screen. It's a little small. I'm sorry, y'all. Into the free market system. Ultimately, as historian Juliet E.K. Walker suggests in Black Entrepreneurship, the goods and services offered by slave entrepreneurs were a necessary and integral part of the antebellum Southern economy. Walker, 1983, page 47. The biographies and stuff. I'm going to share this thing here with you guys. I thank everybody that came through. Yeah, these are all the sources in here. Yeah, that's all of it. Okay. Just grab this here for you guys. Done. Come on. Jeez, this is annoying. This takes so long. Do this. Copy. All right, here we go. All right. And here's the link. to the article. So, I like doing these videos. These are like my favorite videos to do on my channel. Y'all know I like acting fool and stuff. But this Black history and stuff, because I like doing Black history that's not talked about by most people that are really, what's the word I'm looking for? That really are like over the top about like slavery, but a lot of these people they don't really necessarily tell the truth about what was happening. I want to know what actually happened. You know what I mean? Not just take something that you feel that's gonna be like clickbait or whatever, and just ride that all the way home. You know what I mean? Like, oh, the beat like the buck breaking, the Tariq Nasheed in this book breaking video. You watch that video and actually do the research, you will find out that that's one of the worst documented. All of Tariq's Nasheed's videos, the buck breaking, the what is it, hidden color or whatever it's called. They're all horrible. Like, it's horrible research, and it's very deceptive. Like they don't want to tell you the truth, and that would spark the video that I did last night. Because somebody sent me something, and it was from one of the buck breaking videos that showed Rizza Islam saying that, talking about the NAMBLA movement, and the guy that was in NAMBLA was Sharad. Wait, what was his name? David Thorud or something like that, and saying that he was the father of the gay rights movement, and he also was down with NAMBLA or whatever. For one, he wasn't the father of the gay rights movement. He was part of the gay rights movement organization, and he also was part of the NAMBLA movement. Correct. But he broke off, and a lot of people broke off from him. A lot of gay rights activists broke off of him and started to be on a more political level of it, right? So it just shows how these people will sit there now. These people will be super religious, and you look in their books about like telling lies and stuff, and these people will straight up lie to you. So I took it. It took me 5 minutes to get down to the information that he wasn't a father of that movement, and that he actually broke off from a lot of the rest of those movements because they were siding with the Black Panthers and stuff like that for more to assimilate. He broke off saying that they were assimilating into hetero culture, or assimilating into, like the everyday people. See, that's when you come with a problem with a lot of these people, like these so-called Afrocentrics that tell Black history. They don't want to assimilate into America culture or be part of America, period. So they'll make up things that make America look like the worst place on earth, and make horrible times, or not the best of times in this country, make it 1,000 times worse, right? And what they want to do in the long run is actually make the country the way that they're complaining about. So I do videos like this to, just teach, people like true stuff about slavery. Like I did a video on the presidents. I read it right off the White House website and what the presidents thought on slavery. All the presidents and stuff from like the beginning all the way up. And you'll be surprised what you see in there. And these people had no pressure to say, oh, slavery is a bad thing or anything like that. They had no pressure to do that. There was some Black people that was come knock them in the head, or they was going to protest? No. They did it because that's the way they felt. And like I've shown where the United States wanted to end slavery, but to keep everybody together, and just like how you have products today that the government might ban, they'll allow you to keep those products or sell the products that you have. and after they're gone, you just can't purchase anymore. So they couldn't just turn off slavery. Like slavery just couldn't get just turned off. You know what I mean? Because the whole economy would fall, and they would fall in a worse predicament than the country is already in with the slave. So I don't know. So I'm just trying to do my best here. If anybody got any like they disagree with me, anything, is more than free to hop on and discuss it with me, or leave it in the comments or whatever. You know what I mean? I just try to keep it real out here. Keep it right down the middle. So with that, y'all, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I got another one I want to do today, a little bit more fun. I want to release some of these Judah Nazar receipts, just so people could like take them, screenshot them, and stuff like that, have them for their own. I'm going to do the stream that immediately put it in members only. So if you guys don't catch the show, that's on y'all. If y'all don't come asking me for receipts, y'all going to have to become a member to get them. Unless, you know what I mean, I'm cool with you and I drop the receipt on y'all. Like, you know what I'm saying? Y'all people know who could come to me and ask for receipts and stuff like that. Because there's a lot of people that don't have our interests and stuff with what receipts are, people and stuff. They'll come to me because, you know, I'd be happy to give it up. Like, even if I don't like the motherfucker, I'll give them the receipts to beat up our Judah now. So, anyway, with that, let's talk about that. I'll try to keep it positive on this video. Please support the channel, like the video, subscribe. Don't forget the notification bell so you get some more information when I'm down to drop another video. Please donate if you can. My Cash App is $CultBuster. It's right there at the bottom of the screen right now. You'll get added to the supporters list, which you see following the Cash App. This will be on the bottom of all my live streams and stuff that I do for as long as I'm on YouTube, right? So, and this is a way of giving a thanks. And I also will do a thank you video for you. So, that's what's up, y'all. So, I appreciate the people that did hang out. Got Shamian, Shaka Forever, Negi Springfield. Homeboy. What's his name? Hold on a second. Dang. Man. I bought a brand new mouse and it still be acting crazy. Food Manti and Suave Star. So Suave Star, I ain't seen him in a while. In a minute. Suave Star got a cool channel too. Yeah, so that's about it, y'all. I'm up out of here. I'm Killer B, the doggone witch finder general. You got a witch. Burn them up.